This is about as serious as it gets in terms of vulnerabilities for web apps. This is a 10 out of 10 on the CVSS scale. React and Next.js are wildly popular, and this vulnerability just lets you execute code on servers with no special privileges whatsoever. This is just straight RCE. So kudos to the security researcher Lachlan who found it. He reported it to the Meta Bug Bounty Program back on November 29th. I'm recording this on December 4th. If you're seeing this and don't watch the rest of the video, the patch is out. You need to go apply it right now. This is literally run an incident type stuff, but be careful. There are a whole bunch of fake POCs on GitHub. We'll get to that. And so I'll leave a link to a good post that has a breakdown of the actual exploit and a tool that you can use to detect if you have this vulnerability, in your environment. And if we go over to the actual advisory from the React team, they even call it out: unauthenticated remote code execution vulnerability in React server components. These couple words in succession mean drop everything and go fix. The notice goes on to say if your React code doesn't use a server, your app's not affected. And if your app does not use a framework bundler or bundler plugin that supports the React server component, your app is not affected by this vulnerability. But I've seen a lot of quotes that say, if you're not sure, you kind of have to assume, because there are ways that even if you do not implement any of these server function endpoints, your app could still be vulnerable if it just supports the React server components. And before I get to the stats and how to protect yourself from this vulnerability, just a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's awesome because I get to show you a product I actually use, Sublime Security. They recently came out with some research and some new protections around ICS phishing. If you're unfamiliar, ICS is the file extension for calendar invites. I've seen this attack against myself. You get these emails with calendar invites on them. The calendar invite ends up on your calendar, even if the email is quarantined or categorized as spam, whatever, it'll still show up on your calendar. Sublime has seen a big uptick in this, but this attack is pretty gnarly because not only does the email have an attachment, which is the normal phishing tactic, the calendar invite has another attachment. So as they point out, this is 2 payload delivery methods. This is upping the chance of success for the attack. Calendar invites often slip past all sorts of secure email gateways or any other junk folder filtering that you have. And that's why us at Vulnerable You, for my team here, we use Sublime to make sure that we catch this kind of stuff and it gets auto-deleted. Here, they've got some really good examples in this blog post. So here's a phishing email for this freeconferencecall.com. So here's payload delivery number 1, right? Try to get the person to call this number on the phone here. And then no matter what, even if it's in junk, this meeting will end up automatically putting itself on the target's calendar with a bunch of the exact same phishing information. Even if the message is deleted, I'm seeing more and more of this. Example number 2, you get these very benign looking emails, and then there could be an attachment with a PDF, and the PDF isn't malicious. It's not malware. But in this case, there's a QR code in that PDF that's delivering people to the phishing site. Sublime will auto-detect these QR codes. What I love about Sublime is they got a lot of open source rules. You can go to their GitHub and look at a bunch of these rules and how they're crafted. You can craft your own that are more, tuned to your specific environment and your threats. But they have a QR code evaluator. They have this, this is one of my favorite ones, brand impersonation. A lot of these phishing emails will say their DocuSign, say their PayPal, say their Microsoft, but then the links in the email don't go to those websites. They, of course, are going to scan the attachments and then even do language analysis with AI to detect phishing. Huge fan of what Sublime's building. I know the founders since basically day 0. We've been using the product for a long time now. Love it. Love that I get a chance to recommend it to you guys. Check it out in the link below. Tell them I sent you. It's the best way to support the channel, and they'll take extra special care of you. Let's get back to the video. If we pop over to the Wiz blog about this, they're a huge cloud security company. They have a ton of data to look at to try to find this vulnerability. They said that their research team shows that 39% of cloud environments that they're looking at contain vulnerable instances of this. So I wouldn't waste a whole lot of time trying to figure out if you're in that bucket that isn't impacted or is impacted. This is 39% of cloud environments, not 39% of React or Next.js deploys. This is just of cloud environments, which just goes to show you incredible how popular React and Next.js are at this point. The POCs that are coming out that aren't fake, like I mentioned earlier in the video, are near 100% reliability. One of the things that makes this particularly gnarly, in my opinion, is that it's a complete default configuration that's vulnerable. So all it takes for an attacker is to craft an HTTP request to take advantage of this insecure deserialization bug in the React server components, and the vulnerability is handling data that is attacker controlled. So this is user input that could be malicious that would then lead to this remote code execution. As they give them more details, when a server receives specially crafted malformed payload, it fails to validate the structure correctly. This allows attacker control data to influence the server-side execution logic, which results in the execution of privileged JavaScript code. So once they get a POC working, it's working near 100% of the time. So it's not like a race condition or anything like that. And I mean, I just can't hammer how serious this part is alone. So this is completely remote, non-authenticated. You just send an HTTP request to a server, which is what you do to servers all the time. The researcher actually had to put up this site with like the name of the vulnerability on react2shell.com just in response to like the wave of bad proof of concepts that are showing up on GitHub. So as I say, anything that requires the developer to have explicitly exposed dangerous functionality to the client is not a valid POC. They've seen some examples of the POCs in these kinds of functions here. These would only be exploitable if you had consciously chosen to let clients invoke these, which is not the whole 10 out of 10 vulnerability, which is default configuration, maligned HTTP request, deserialization vuln. The genuine vulnerability does not have this constraint. In Next.js, the list of server functions is managed for you, doesn't contain these. This researcher was concerned because these POCs are referenced in publication and vulnerability aggregators, so they're catching attention. These aren't just like random GitHub POCs. Then I saw this post floating around Twitter from Searchlight Cyber, that this one seems legit. So this is not just a POC, but they actually have a tool in this article, and I'll put a link below that you can use to scan to figure out if this vulnerability is in your environment. They kind of echo the researcher's point saying, hey, some of the POCs we've seen on GitHub completely misdiagnosed the root cause of the vulnerability. The key fact is that it can be exploited on Next.js without any prerequisites. I'm sorry I'm repeating myself. This is just wild, and I'm glad that the patch is easy. It's just an update, but boy, we got to be updating these things. This is everywhere, as we saw in Wiz stats. So this is going to get popped a whole lot. If we're not already seeing active exploitation, I haven't seen a whole lot of chatter of it. I am expecting it imminently, like 24 hours. This is an easily exploited vuln that is everywhere. It's going to take a longer for people to roll out patches than it is for the attackers to start weaponizing this. So their security research team has put out this HTTP request that could be used to safely and confidently confirm the presence of this remote code execution vulnerability. So here it is. They craft this post body to take advantage of this vulnerability. And in doing so, the vulnerable version will throw a 500 error. And then you can actually see this e-digest thing is what you're looking for down here. They go on to explain it down here. This is because of the way that the vulnerable version uses a colon to delimit the object properties. So here's the vulnerable code. You can see splitting on colons. They go on to explain how they crafted it and took advantage of that and like why that actually throws a 500. But the important part is patched versions of the React server components will check that this colon notation, which prevents the crash from occurring. The crash is what it would then allow remote code execution. So here's the check. So then this means if the colon syntax references properly that doesn't exist, it's ignored. This means that post-patch, we don't get the 500 anymore. This is a great little one HTTP request to see 500 means vulnerable. If you don't get an error, if the server doesn't throw up, you're patched. So yeah, if you're one of the 55 million people on React that are downloading React in NPM, or the 16.5 million people that Next.js gets download from NPM every week, I mean, this stuff is just everywhere. This is going to be a bloodbath. Get to upgrading. Here's the patched versions for you. I'll include a bunch of these links down below. As someone who was literally coding on a Next.js app when I saw this vulnerability drop, you can imagine that it caught my attention. Thanks so much. I hit 20,000 subscribers on YouTube last night, which is just an awesome milestone for me. Thank you so much for the support. Hit all the YouTube buttons down below. It really helps the channel. And definitely check out the sponsor of today's video. I'm a happy customer, and I'm excited that I got to show them to you today. Subscribe for more cybersecurity news.